Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Napoleon and today we are back with another Enlisted video, and today we're going to be talking about the latest Enlisted event squad that we are just given, and this is the 101st Airborne Division, 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment. This comes with the M1A1 Thompson Para, and once again, it is one of those Thompsons in which it is unique, but practically not as different as other Thompsons, except for in this case, it's much worse in some regards. And so without further ado, let's just get started with the video, starting with the history. The 501st Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division was the first airborne division designated by the United States Armed Forces. It served in World War II, Vietnam, and all the way to Afghanistan. In World War II, it was activated in 15th of November 1942 in Georgia. Initially, it had a training in Georgia and then went to Fort Benning and then all the way to England. It participated in Operation Overlord, parachuting over Normandy, with about 898 losses during the entire campaign. During Operation Market Garden, it secured several bridges while sustaining 661. At Bastogne, it held the city under siege and with 580 losses. It was prepared for the invasion of Japan, but was then disbanded on August 20th, 1945. If you want to see more information regarding 101st and the 501st Infantry Regiments, I highly suggest that you go do some research yourself, because this is the second time I've done a video on this squad. So without further ado, let's just move on to the weapon. And this is the M1A1 Thompson Para. And of course, this is the regular M1A1 except for, well, they sawed off the, well, stock and they double taped the magazine. In all reality, this is more practical than it seems, but in game it will be very, very odd, and I will get to that very, very soon. But that said, let's move on to the stats, because if I haven't recalled, I have already done a video on the Thompson for the 5th time. Yes, that's how much I think I've done. And without further ado, let's just move on to the stats. Caliber is 11.4, hit power of 8.2, muzzle velocity of 265, rate of fire of 690, reload of 1.8, shot deviation of 73, recoil control of 60 because it has no stock, vertical recoil of 39, horizontal recoil of 19, 30-round magazine, of which that magazine you can literally just swip around and you will have a quicker reload, so that's actually pretty cool. And without further ado, let's move on to the verdict, because pretty much this is the 5th time I am doing a Thompson video. In my personal opinion, this is a pretty unique squad. Notice how I say unique. And that said, I do think this is one of the worst paratrooper squads out there. As a matter of fact, I do think it's much worse than the BSA Wells gun, and that is because the Thompson practically has no recoil control. You see, the BSA Wells gun is pretty accurate at long range, even though it's vertical recoil. The Thompson is quite literally the opposite in the sense that at long range it just fails, and at short range you barely can't even see what you're shooting because, well, in my personal opinion, these sights are practically just straight upright terrible, in my personal opinion. Of course, it will get some used to operate it, but it is once again a Thompson, meaning it will do some damage. Essentially, you have to go close and very close to use this weapon. And honestly, once you do that, hip firing, this is actually a breeze, because once again, this is pretty good at hip firing. That said, in comparison to the other Thompsons, this is arguably one of the worst Thompsons out there. In my personal opinion, it is worse than the M1928A1 box magazine Thompson, which is also at BR3, and it's pretty much worse than the M1 Thompson, which is a tier above, and at the same time, it's also worse than the M1A1 Thompson, the regular M1A1 Thompson, and of course the Thompson 30 cal. So it is much worse than all of those Thompsons combined. And that is mainly because the recoil control is pretty bad and you have a massive sway when you fire the thing, and of course the rate of fire is pretty low, so you also tend to have an issue regarding that, and of course not to mention the fact that the sights are just straight upright terrible. And so with all those methods combined, I do think this is either one of the worst Thompsons in game, and I honestly do think that you should throw out the squad. I'd rather use the BSA Wells gun 24/7 than this abomination, because once again, it is essentially a Thompson without a stock, which means the vertical recoil is problematic, and you do have a quick reload rate, but the issue is that, well, you don't have that much ammunition, and because you're missing only a lot of your shots, that means that your ammunition is never going to be enough. Unlike the BSA Wells gun, in which, well, one magazine is enough to take out an entire squad, which, unlike the Thompson, it feels like one magazine is enough to take out 3 guys, of which you have to use your pistol for the last guy. That is personal experience. But in my personal opinion, it could just be my issue, and I could be just terrible at aiming, which I recognize and admit. In my personal opinion, I think Enlisted should just give us the stock with this weapon, and literally that could be just the best of it. That said, have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.